What is up, hotties? Welcome back to another episode of Stay Hot. I'm Blaiden Kirk, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, Matthew Spawnhour and Theo Ash, and I can tell by Theo's face that when I came in on the mic, I was really hot. But we're here to recap Week 18, the final week of the NFL season, and boy, was it underwhelming. But there were some good storylines that came out of it, and of course, we have the playoff bracket set. We have the first half, or a little more than the first half, of the first round of the NFL draft set. So there is still a lot to talk about and a lot to look forward to in the coming weeks and the coming months. But before we get into all the great news that we have to talk about today, Matt, Theo, how are you guys doing on this wonderful Sunday night?
It's a winter wonderland where you and me are, B. Kirk. We've got a
more so for you than it is for me, but yeah.
Really, it's not a winter wonderland up in Columbus.
It just started snowing like probably 2, maybe 3 hours ago.
Mm-hmm. It's been snowing all. It's been snowing all day here. We're gonna get up to 8-9 inches, which is a lot for northern Kentucky or Cincinnati or wherever. And they've shut down all the businesses and whatnot. The schools and whatever.
I think I'm supposed to get 3, maybe 4.
That's not baller at all. So I've been enjoying that. I'm not the biggest winter guy, but I can appreciate a good snow,
Yes.
even though I think the summer's better.
I wish it was snowing here in Denver. It's been snowless for over a month, I feel like. There's just been no substantial snowfall at all. And I feel like the rest of the country got a winter weather advisory tonight.
It's a lot. Yeah, there's been a lot of different places that have. Of course, I've had the dilemma. I wake up this morning, and my Wi-Fi on my computer isn't connecting. I'm like, okay. I try to fix it on the computer. It doesn't work. I'm like, okay. I'll get a range extender. I'll put it up in my room and then connect it with the Ethernet cable. Boom. Get my range extender, put it up here. It doesn't work. Cool. I'll go buy a new one. Can't buy a new one. Businesses are closed. Cool. I'll move the Wi-Fi equipment into my room. Don't have the plugins. So right now I've got a 50-foot Ethernet cable running Looney Tunes style through my house to my computer, which is just long enough to make it to the point where I had to slide my desk over 2 feet. So
Tom and Jerry.
It's not great.
That up.
At least it's recording nicely. You sound great.
Let's go.
So I'm impressed by this Ethernet cable. I feel like whenever we have one of those involved, it never actually solves any problems. So I'm glad that today it is.
You're only breaking out the Ethernet cable when you've got an issue, unless it's your regular setup, which it's not for me. So it's kind of it's put in a lot of bad situations.
I see.
I guess that's fair. Theo, how are you doing?
Doing pretty well. I had Jersey Mike's today, and that was kind of the highlight.
Hell yeah, dude. What'd you get?
I got the classic Italian, regular size, and then I got a cookie, and then I got chips. And
you got a cookie,
that.
Okay.
Yeah. I ate the cookie first, and then I ate the sandwich.
Come on.
Because I had to get gas.
Because you're young and dumb, and you can just live your life however you damn well please.
That's right. And on my way home from the gas station, I just wanted to eat something. I wanted to eat the whole sandwich, but I didn't think I could while I was driving by myself. Maybe if Cammie was in the car, she could have fed it to me, but because it was just me. Because it was just me, I had to wait, so I decided to eat the cookie. It was kind of a, carefree moment from me. I was very
living reckless,
liberating.
Man. That's what your 20s is all about.
But then I came home, and it was quite the slate of football, and that's what I've been doing mostly today.
Let's talk a little bit about that slate of football. A lot of
backups in today.
A lot of backups, so we can't talk about every game, but one that did have playoff implications and had maybe Hall of Fame implications was Saints Buccaneers. I'm going to go ahead and throw you guys the question. What do you guys think of Mike Evans stat padding his way to, I think, 1,003 yards?
Funny, man. I just thought it was so funny.
Evans has had a crazy winter arc. He came back after missing 3 games, and he had 512 yards in the month of December. That's a lot of yards. Impressive. That is a lot of yards in 1 month, and I especially for a 30-year-old wide receiver. And I feel like it's kind of been the year of the older receiver a little bit. I feel it's been a long time since a wide receiver over the age of 30 has been dominant. Like, they just all seem to have fallen off relatively quickly once they hit that age. But this year, like, Devontae had a crazy December, and Adam Thielen had a crazy December, and Mike Evans had a crazy December. So I think this is like the best month for old head. And I know it's January now, but the party kept on rolling for all 3 of those guys. So I feel like it's been the winter of old head wide receivers.
Yeah, I feel that a little bit. I was getting pretty frustrated with the whole Mike Evans discourse on Twitter. I'm going to make a video about this at some point, but like the idea that he's a first ballot Hall of Famer is so ridiculous. I think a lot of people are underestimating how hard it is to be a first ballot guy. I think a lot of people are taking first ballot as in like, you're definitely a Hall of Famer. And like, that's not, it means more than that. The amount of time you wait is kind of used as sort of like an additional way to reward the true great players. In the last 30 years, there's been 3 first team or first ballot Hall of Fame wide receivers: Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, and Calvin Johnson. You know, I don't think Evans is best of a generation level like you need to be to earn that honor.
100%. Steve Smith, I know this is a Panthers podcast, 1/3 of it, but Steve Smith has over 1,000 career receptions. Mike Evans is at 827. Steve Smith has over 1,500 total yards in his career. Mike Evans is at 595. Evans does have more touchdowns, but Steve Smith also had a bunch of like kick return, like he has a kick returning All-Pro. They've both been in the Pro Bowl 5 times. He has a triple crown, Steve Smith. He's been All-Pro 3 times instead of 2. Now, Evans does have a ring, but I don't know how much that gets you in a wide receiver discussion.
This all to say, a Super Bowl MVP. Should he be first team All-Pro?
It's true. It's true.
Dude, the Super Bowl, like how much should that count for Hall of Fame discussion is not a battle I want to fight, but like, you know, it's largely situation no matter how good you are, right?
I do think it's funny. People will be like, you know, they love to talk about the 1,000-yard number, and it's cool. But we always talk about it is kind of arbitrary, right? If Mike Evans, instead of having 11 straight 1,000-yard seasons, he had 13 straight seasons of like 970 yards. No one would care. No one would give a shit. But he would have the exact same number of total yards.
You know, it's like it's an incredibly, I don't want to be just a hater about like an incredibly impressive achievement, because like his consistency and his longevity at this point are insane. If he keeps playing like this, and he hasn't really showed any serious signs of slowing down, which I feel like is the other big thing. Like overall, this is not it's phony in the sense that they boosted him to 1,000 and like, I agree it's an arbitrary. It's phony in the sense that they boosted him like 5 yards to the 1,000, right? It's an arbitrary line, and when you go out of your way like that against like what makes sense in the game to grab it, you have an advantage over everybody else. But like he hasn't really slowed down lately. Like he's playing basically as good as he's ever been, really.
Also, he did get a $3 million bonus for those 5 yards. So
yeah.
Yeah,
I can't blame him too much for that.
No, I don't blame anybody for doing it. It's a cool achievement. Baker said something funny after the game. He said, like, well, if we didn't get him that 5 yards, then he'd have to play another 11 years and get the record, which I thought was a good quote.
To play another 11 years.
But he's been dominant. I mean, he's I'm not. It's not any kind of phony record. He's been crazy efficient. I mean, he missed 3 games, so
Right.
in terms of snaps on the field, it's not like he's just getting tons of meaningless volume. Without Chris Godwin on the field, they've been able to beat man coverage crazy effectively because of Evans. He's been phenomenal as a one-on-one threat on the boundary. And then another wide receiver I want to talk about is Jalen McMillan.
Yeah, I was
Bucs.
about to say he's been fantastic.
He's been great recently. He reminds me so much of JSN. Like, I feel like those two are kind of just the same player. Copy and paste
so?
it.
Yo, Theo, when you texted us, McMillan is a JSN clone. I thought you were talking about Tet McMillan, and I meant to text you back like, sure, except like 6 inches taller.
No, I just feel like they have the same like route tree and like body type and like skill set. I guess I didn't put too much thought into it when I texted it. It just seems they just have the same vibes to me. They fill the same niche in the offense as kind of that like flexible, kind of taller. Like
flexible, and it comes into account like with the body control. JSN's great at that. I totally see where you're coming from.
Yeah, like the body control, the 6'1", 190 body control, like slot fade guy. Like, I don't know. They seem a little similar to me. And JSN's having this huge breakout season, and I feel like McMillan is having a caliber of season that's a step down from that, but still.
McMillan's
fantastic.
a rookie, and he's really started to turn it on. Like kind of down the stretch here. So we'll see how that works out going into year 2. But I agree. I think they've really got something there. Tampa's an interesting team, the way that they've sort of built things out there, with the signing Baker, and they're continuing to draft really well, and that's why they're winning this division again, even though, honestly, like not their greatest season, not their luckiest season. Like the receivers went down. They were in a really bad spot. They had some really bad losses. It's just not a perfect team or anything, but their consistency as well, I think, speaks volumes on them.
Yeah, this is their 4th straight year winning the division.
Mm-hmm. And they had a 4-game losing streak in the middle of the year. Evans was hurt for all of that. Like they're 9-4 with Evans playing. I, again, cannot say enough about the pass protection that they get every single week on the deep dropbacks, on throws downfield. It's just hilarious how low their pressure rate is. And then Baker's game today, he entered a flow state. He had some bad miss, like he had that bad miss to Evans at the sideline.
Early, he was playing bad.
Yeah.
He had that ball that got kind of tipped and intercepted, and I haven't seen the all 22 of that one yet. Maybe he could have lofted it over the DT. I'm a bit harsh where I think tipped balls are kind of on the quarterback. So it did get tipped, but I don't know if that's always an excuse. But at any rate, after he missed Evans, he kind of was going crazy. Like the touchdown to Jalen McMillan on the run, like the arm talent there was top notch. Some of the scrambling that he had, like he maneuvered the pocket well, and I think on like 3rd and 16, he took off and picked up a first, and then he was so amped up that he like trucked the guy even after he picked it up. I'm like, don't fumble, just don't fumble, don't take a hit, and he like lowers the shoulder and gets like belted. He was not thinking about anything but just advancing the ball, getting yardage, making the playoffs. Like he was balling in the last half of this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I liked how he was using his legs a lot, even though they did kind of then get a little too high on their own supply, a little too cute maybe, and have that designed run
That
on
was
3rd
strange.
down for him. I wonder how many designed runs Baker has seen in his career, or when is the last time? I honestly don't know if that's something they pull out.
They use him as a decoy, I think, a decent amount. Like they'll fake QB power, and like he'll be running behind 2, pulling linemen. They opened last game up like this, where I'm like, did they just fake Baker's QB power? And then I guess to keep him honest, they actually have to hand him the ball sometimes. I probably would have done that on like a
Right.
second
I
and
do
two.
like the keep them honest after you've already pulled your trick on a big third down. But fair enough. I can't hate too much, I guess.
I'm trying to see if I can find.
I mean, it was not a good
how
play
many
call on fourth
design
down, I
Baker
think.
Mayfield runs there were.
Was it
I
fourth or
would-
third?
I could log into Sports Info Solutions and find out, but that would take a long time and it would make a lot of clacking sounds. So I don't think I'm going to do it.
Late, another time. But yeah, Bucs got the win. So they end up going to the playoffs, winning the NFC South. Had they lost this game, though, it would have opened the door for the Atlanta Falcons. However, they ran into a bit of a buzzsaw of their own in, oh my gosh, Bryce Young had just maybe the best game of his career so far.
Definitely his best game.
You don't think it was his best game?
I said definitely his best game for sure.
Okay. I was about to say, what game was better? 5 total touchdowns. He looked, I think, I made a video about this. I don't know what he's missing from his game at this point. I mean, since he's been back from the bench, I would say the tools stuff is definitely there, the mobility, the arm talent to like access the entire field. I would say the pocket presence has taken a big leap. I would say like just the general field sense, the accuracy, and it all came together in this game. And I feel like next year, if we're seeing this on a consistent level, he's going to enter top 10 conversations, and deservedly so.
I think the thing that Bryce is missing is just like big game performance. Like you can play the Falcons defense and their pass rush in a meaningless game and play spoiler and have 5 touchdowns. But it's another thing entirely to be consistently great over the course of a season and show up in all your big games in prime time against playoff teams. It wasn't that long ago versus Dallas that he took 6 sacks. He had 2 picks, like just tons of negative plays. That's probably the best defense that he's played recently. But I agree with you that he is flashing a ton of high-end tools. Like he is slipping out of pressure, like out of the grasp of defensive linemen, which it seemed like he was too small to do, but now he's decisive. He's hard to take down. He's just killing it against the blitz, his biggest weakness. He has been accurate. The whole shot on like 1st and 25 that he hit to Sanders was beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's clear how much he's feeling it. He's turning around, putting his hand up in the air before the touchdown even gets there.
Lamar Jackson-esque.
He got the Steph Curry comps the whole draft season, and that was kind of why. Like he just kind of has that extra sense, that sixth sense to know these kinds of things, to know that the pass is getting hit before it gets there, and just to be in that kind of flow state on the field. He is a very promising player still, and love the performance, but I do think he needs to win more games before we really elevate him into kind of being in the top 10.
It seems like he has the ability to be strong in a lot of different categories. I agree, Blaiden. Especially, again, we've said it a million times with things like his pocket presence and his ability to deal with pressure. It was a disaster at the beginning of the year. It made him unplayably bad, the worst quarterback in the league. Now it seems like it's a strength a lot of the time. However, you're right. Like, what do the Panthers have right now that makes it very easy to get hype about any of their young players? They have no expectations. When the Panthers go and lose a game against Dallas where Cooper Rush is starting and they only put up 14 points against a not great defense, it just doesn't matter because they're the Panthers. Who cares? Yeah. You look after that game and you say, I'm glad they lost because it helps our draft stock, that type of stuff. When the pressure is on a little bit more week to week to perform, which I think next year, if you're Carolina, I don't know if they make the playoffs, but you want to take a step. And I think any step you take from this is definitely going to be one where at least some point during the season you feel like you're in the race. then there's going to be more of that. And we'll start to see where Bryce really shakes out among NFL quarterbacks then. I still think when we compare him to the absolute top guys like, Herbert and Allen, he just doesn't have the tools that those guys have. It's not necessarily that he's missing something. It's just that does he have a crazy superpower? But honestly, the way that he's been putting things together, maybe it's not any one thing, but his accuracy has been amazing for a lot of this stuff. And his feel, I agree, has been fantastic. And he's felt more comfortable taking off and making plays with his legs. So if this all comes together, I don't know. I'm pretty excited about it. I've seen some people.
You have to be, man.
I've seen some people get a little too high on the pan. They're like, this is going to be the next breakout team.
Their defense sucks, man.
Their defense is the worst in the NFL. They don't have a bad defense. They have the worst defense. And it's going to take them getting a lot right. And then it's probably still not fixable in one off season, even if you do get Derek Brown back, which will be big. So
I saw someone say that this Panthers defense is one of the worst defenses of all time. Are there any numbers that support that? Or
I'm sure there are. I mean, I tweeted out a graph earlier today where on the x-axis we had points allowed per drive. The Panthers were north of 2.8 points allowed per drive. The next worst team is at 2.4. There is nobody. To put that in perspective, so the difference between 2.4 and 2.8, you might be thinking, okay, what does that actually mean? But how about this? The difference between 2.4 and 2, which is the same distance, most of the league is in that range. All right, so between 2 and 2.4, everybody's all piled in. Between 2.4 and 2.8, there is nothing, and then there's the Panthers way on the wrong side of it. Opponent points per game. The Panthers are just under 32 allowed per game. No one else is over 28.
Yeah,
So
I mean, it's a disastrously bad defense. We've known since week 1 when Derek Brown went down that they're just not going to be good at anything. Their run defense is pathetically bad, and they need a total overhaul. I mean, you can keep Horn, who didn't even really have his greatest year and is always injured. You can keep Brown, of course, but outside of that, and a couple of other guys. Outside of that, you really got to say we got to change a whole bunch here. So we'll see.
Yeah. And this year gives them the opportunity to do that. And that's why Bryce Young, being as good as he's been, is just so huge for them, because now they don't have to waste time thinking we got to find our new quarterback. Is it going to be Dalton? Is it going to be, whoever? No, it's Bryce Young. Canales said it emphatically after the game. And of course it's true. No one doubts it. On the other side of the ball, the Falcons, Penix looked good. I mean, I guess it's against this horrible defense.
Yeah.
But man, the arm talent that he has is so real. The ball is just an absolute rocket leaving his hand. Some of the throws on the move he had, some of the corner shot that he hit to Ray McLeod at the end of the first half, the touchdown to Evans where it curled inside and he hit it in the middle of a bunch of zone defenders. His footwork problems that were so apparent, especially versus Washington, I think they're still going to be there for a while because they were there at Washington. And I think consistency and accuracy will be the storyline with him. But man, there were some amazing plays from him in this game.
Yeah, I mean, him and Drake London were absolutely balling.
And London had
they connected on the same not goal line fade, but jump ball 50-50 ball in the end zone twice on back-to-back plays. I thought that was just they're just oh, you were slightly out of bounds last time. All right, let's just do it again. And then they caught it again.
London had 187 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he also dropped 3 passes. This could have been a 200-yard performance from him. This should have been a 200-yard performance from him.
He's a freak.
Yeah, I mean, again, these yards count probably for like 0.3, 0.4, half, maybe against the Panthers defense, but it was still cool, I guess. I think Penix definitely has a good amount of tools. You can tell that he can read the field out well. The question I have with him is whatever happens with the accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty worried about that. I think it could be a serious issue. It's one of those things where, like, accuracy usually stems from footwork, and footwork when you're 24, I just feel like that doesn't necessarily always change. Not saying I'm totally out on him or anything, not because he had a good game, he looked good, and I think there's a lot more positive than negative, but I do wonder how that develops over the next couple of years. That's the thing to watch for him. That's the difference maker.
There's so much work that needs to be done with his release. I just feel like the head movement, the tilt that he has in his head and his torso, along with some of the bad feet, it's just a lot to fix. And then he throws it with so much power that, this is something that a lot of the really strong armed quarterbacks sometimes struggle with, is like, when they miss really bad too. And I think Penix will definitely be dealing with that for a while. Go ahead, Blaiden.
Well, I was just going to say, when it comes, I think it's possible for him to fix the mechanical issues. I don't think it's going to be like a Daniel Jones situation where it's like he just can't feel like what's going on around him, and there's like no way that's ever going to get fixed. But I agree it's going to be difficult just because when it's all of those mechanicals, all of those footwork issues, those need to get fixed in like high school and college. Because when you get to the NFL, there's just so much more information that you have to absorb that I don't know, like, if you really have time to focus on those things in the same capacity that you would, those fundamentals. Because, like, I feel like you look at a lot of these college offenses, they're pretty simple compared to an NFL offense. And so you have more time to focus on fundamentals, and I just don't know if you're going to have, like, I'm sure like it'll be a focal point in the offseason. They're not going to be like, you're just not going to work on it. But it is definitely something where it's going to be difficult, but I think it's doable because it's like something that you can work on.
Yeah, and it helps him to, like, he has Drake London and Bijan Robinson too, which bodes well for his future. Especially Bijan. Well. I thought he was the other big story from this game. Just one, again, Panthers defense, but still just 100% dominant. Looked like an MVP running back,
Bijan is one of my guys, so we'll count his yards for full.
Yeah,
but Drake London's one of my guys, so
I mean, we closed our eyes for his targets. I'll be
all 18 targets.
I agree. I think London, I still think it's a little disrespectful to put him in CeeDee Lamb conversations, but I can't admit, we might be getting there.
I still might put him in CeeDee Lamb. I am going to move.
Yeah, well, this might be one of those takes where how long is it going to be true for? There might be some worry with that where he's just ascending and you might as well not fight on that front because it's a losing battle long term anyway. Regardless,
he did have 3 drops today.
He did have 3 drops.
He did have 3 drops.
I mean, we're going to move him. I'm going to move him out of the George Pickens tier after this week of football. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. Pickens also had 3 drops. He just also didn't have 187 yards to go along with it.
Yeah, and he also threw a hissy fit.
What? Pickens? Drake London would never do that. He would just get unsportsmanlike conduct penalties after every touchdown that he scores.
That's true.
I do want to say about Bijan, though, it's not just this game. He kind of quietly almost, but he has lived up to the hype of this season, I think. It got stolen, his spotlight here a little bit by, Saquon doing his thing and Derrick Henry being a beast. But the reality is, he's one of the best 3 or 4 backs in the NFL, no question about it. His vision is ridiculous. His speed power combination is rare, just like, Saquon's is. Maybe not quite that same level, but I mean, I don't know, man. And his agility, his ability to make cuts and slice through defenses is ridiculous. That's always the thing for me. He just seems to do such a good job cutting upfield and keeping his momentum going and not screwing around. And then I agree. He's, you brought up the point. He's great in pass protection. I don't know if you just said that, I'm remembering a text you sent, but he's just a very all-around back. He's super efficient. The numbers support him. Do they only do one running back or two teams or two for all pro? Because if it's two, he'll be second team, I bet.
Yeah, I think it's just one. I mean, there's a lot of all pro teams. Like there's AP and then there's like PFF. There's like a bunch of
the AP one's the one.
The AP is the one that everybody cares about. And I think they've only got one. I think it'll be tough though, because Saquon and Henry are
just one.
Kind of tough to unseat, but he's so good. Mm-hmm. I mean, every step he takes, he has like full range of motion off of it. And he's just got like the typewriter feet. Like he just picks him up and puts him down like so fast, so fluidly. He's always jump cutting, but not doing it in any kind of inefficient way. His success rate from last year to this year has gone from 43% to 57%. And I think that's on Pro Football Reference. So that doesn't even count today. It'll even rise higher than that after today. The last 2 weeks, the Falcons have the highest early down success rate rushing of anybody in football so far this year, or I guess now. I can't say so far. Like those are just their best early down rushing success rate games. It's the Falcons the last 2 weeks. They were really hitting their stride on the ground towards the end, and it would have made them somewhat formidable in the playoffs, like the level their offensive line was performing at and the level Bijan was performing at. And he is 100% lived up to the hype to me. There is nothing you can say at this point.
I was going to save this until the Lions conversation. Jahmyr Gibbs has also kind of gotten overshadowed by the Saquon and Derrick Henry seasons.
Jahmyr Gibbs has gotten overshadowed by Montgomery, making him not the fantasy darling that he could be, even though he is great in fantasy.
Even though he still managed to lead the league in touchdowns despite Montgomery.
I mean, he's ridiculous. It really is that for Gibbs. It's the fact that he's not the 1A guy and only getting all of the touches that kills him, I really believe. But one take that I look at those two dudes and I look at the next class that's coming up and I look at the guys who are still dominating now, and you know how some people are like, we'll never see another 10K rusher again.
Yeah.
Nope. That's not true. Yes, we will. Sorry. Okay, we have old running backs still dominating right now. We have new guys who have definitely ascended into top 5, getting on legend status, and the next crop of backs is as good as it's been in a long time. Yes, it's going to be tougher because there's more backfields that are splitting carries. You don't see anybody get 400 totes averaging 3.9 yards a rush anymore like you could back in the good old days. But there's still enough talent here, and there's still enough longevity between some of these backs where we're going to see dudes get to that level. This is like when people freaked out that centers were going to just totally die off in the NBA. I think it's a little bit of an overreaction.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way.
It's hilarious.
Would have given Jahmyr Gibbs 400 touches. Right.
No, it's better for everybody if he doesn't do that. But yeah, the takes that there were never going to be an 1,000-yard rusher again,
or
10,000-yard rusher again, made me laugh. Do we think Saquon can average 928 yards a year for the next 3 years?
Probably. Right, he's not that far. I mean, Henry's got it. No,
Henry's definitely got it. Henry's 100% got it. Dude, Josh Jacobs is going to make it, man. It's.
Nick Chubb, sadly, probably will not.
Did he not get to that mark?
10,000 is a lot, I will say. And Chubb famously had his carries always sort of reduced. He never had like a crazy, maybe once, he never had crazy seasons where they give it to him as much as they could have, because he usually had to split with like
Nick
Hunt
Chubb
for
on
a
his
long
career
time.
has 6,843 rushing yards.
Yeah, I guess he only has
Josh Jacobs has
4,000 yards.
6,800.
Although one of those is a fake Mike Evans 996 yard season. So I should say 1,000 yard seasons or something close to that.
That's true.
That's not a fake Mike Evans. I don't want any more smoke with Bucs fans. So it's a very real 996 yard season. I don't even know. But
basically,
what were you saying?
We're talking
Something
about
about running
Jahmyr
backs.
Gibbs and longevity, but it all stemmed from Jahmyr Gibbs having kind of a slept-on season as well, just like Bijan Robinson. Both of those guys are just absolutely cooking. But we'll save the rest of the Lions talk for Vikings versus Lions. I do think we need to talk about the Broncos and kind of the way, I mean, they blow out the Chiefs, right? And that sets up this was a game Bengals fans were watching. And it was like, oh, well, if they lose, then, and the Dolphins lose, then we're in. And then they just belt ass, handled business.
Yeah, that was very anticlimactic. Dude, I've seen some horrible dialogue coming from this game, which I didn't expect. But I guess I should always expect.
Is it this is unfair for Bengals fans?
Yes, this is unfair. Like, I saw...
Win your games, dude. I don't know what...
The season starts in September, not January. Like,
I don't get this perspective on it at all. It is unfair. They got a team that didn't try the last week. Yeah, the Bengals could have done more to get in. Like, it's not like they got screwed in the sense that they had no chance. Like, I mean, it's an 8-loss team. But the Broncos, who lost their last 2 games and themselves were at risk of getting an 8th loss, get a freebie pass because the Chiefs not didn't play Mahomes, but just weren't trying at all. That is unfair. That's totally. It's
I guess
the way that it goes. I don't blame Kansas City.
Is a word you could use, but like at the same time, the Bengals. I mean, Burrow himself said it. Like, we put ourselves in this situation, and then like
Sure,
there's this blame of there being 18 games. Like, I think Chris Broussard said, like, why
that made no sense.
are we going to put in an 18th game if people are just going to rest starters during it? It's like, didn't people rest starters during the 17?
Just a total misunderstanding of like where load management or why it happens. Like, that's not it, dude.
Yeah,
it's
like,
not.
People
one
always
extra game got to too many.
People always lock things up. That's not a new and when they lock things up, they don't play their starters, and sometimes teams are a beneficiary of that. And you set yourself up to be a beneficiary of that in September. Like, it just is the way it went. Like, it's not like, it is unfair. Like, if I was a Bengals fan, I would definitely be like feeling dejected right now and like, damn, why couldn't it have been a fair?
But if you had just like beaten the
Patriots week one,
that's
maybe they would have beaten the Patriots week 1 if the Patriots hadn't been trying. They got, look, it's a tough one. It's the 7 seed. If both teams could have done more. But here's the thing, more so than the Bengals getting screwed, they got it. It's a tough break is all it is. It's the loss, the final loss that you needed to happen in this magical run back. They got literally everything else, and the Chiefs don't try, and the Broncos get in.
Fine, I guess I understand.
I don't know. Like, I would be upset about it if it were my team, and so would every single fan base. Maybe unfair is a tough word for it.
The fans can be mad, but like any kind of dialogue that comes from this is just completely useless. Like, there's nothing that needs to be fixed here.
No, there's nothing that needs to be done.
That can be done.
And it's not like the Chiefs are evil or anything. The Chiefs were wise to do that. If the NFL allowed them, they should have put out 11 random people who weren't on the team at all, not to risk their backups out.
Dude, I would have gone out there.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Is I would have
gotten 5 picks on Bo Nix. You wouldn't have had an answer for me.
You would have gotten Joey Burr.
Me going out there
In
to
the
coach
offs.
Defensive Player of the Year candidate Patrick Surtain.
And then me there to just like yell Bo Nix's like stats in certain situations at him. Like, I know you have the highest turnover worthy play to the intermediate area of the field, Bo. I'd get in his head because I know all these.
And then he'd be like, I
know
gotta
his
prove him wrong.
weaknesses. Yeah,
I
then
gotta
he'd-
prove him wrong. And then he'd force one, and damn it, if it isn't Theo Ash lurking over the middle, ready to pick him off.
Yeah,
But that's how he does it.
It would be a play action like robot where I come downhill, I yell the intermediate stat, and then I bail out and run under the crosser and pick it off at the 12 yards of depth. It would be easy.
Be like him seeing ghosts, man.
But yeah, good win for them. I didn't really have too much to take away from this, just
Dude,
because like
the game was literally like, easily the worst game of the entire season, right?
it was. I
It's
thought
not
it was,
even the.
It was really
It was so funny. Like Wentz just came in and just missed every pass, and like I kind of thought like.
I kind of thought he was gonna ball just because I just thought that's how it was gonna go. No explanation, like reasoning
just-
behind it.
Like who knows?
did they bench Andy Reid too? Did they just like bench everyone?
Maybe.
Reed, I think, was still calling plays, but I don't think any starter was out there. Like I saw early, he tried to throw like a back shoulder fade on Patrick Surtain, and it was like Juju Smith-Schuster out there. It's like, okay, could turn this one off.
Yeah, it was not an exciting game. I had someone tweet at me. They're like, "Respect Bo Nix now," and then immediately, or they sent me a DM, and then immediately after, they were like, "Actually, never mind. I was box score watching. I just watched the 2 touchdowns, and they were so bogus." And like he had a stretch where he like didn't throw an incompletion, but like one of those got like tipped 5 times and caught.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That was crazy. I mean, Bo played like he was like pretty much perfect. So I don't think he couldn't have played better against the backups, but it was like still a preseason environment. So
Sometimes teams do the like resting stuff, but they're still like pretty feisty and they're really like going for it. Dude, the Chiefs did not try the most that maybe any team has ever done in this situation. Like they really didn't, which again, so many Chiefs fans like are taking this as like a knock on them. Cause I think some people are like mad and saying it's dishonorable for the Chiefs. Like, dude, who cares? You know, dude, you earned it.
You did earn it. It's got to feel so good to just eliminate Joe Burrow from playoff.
That's got to be hilarious. This is an all-time
to
awesome
not even
troll,
do anything.
dude.
Like it.
Oh
that
yeah.
just had to be the greatest feeling ever on the sideline. Is just like, and I know the Broncos are division rivals, and like letting them in, maybe it didn't feel as good as I'm thinking, but like Jamar and
Bengals
T.
are bigger
Higgins and
rivals. They are.
Joe Burrow just keeping them home just by losing it.
But like the Eagles, I mean, they were resting guys and they won, you know? So
Yeah, that's true. But they were also playing the Giants.
Which is a little different.
it is a little different. That'll be a team that picks top 5 this year. So
I was rooting for the Bengals to get in because they have a top 5 quarterback. I thought that'd make for a better game, but I have no problem with the Broncos making it. I just wish, I do wish that we had gotten, you know, a better grand finale to this whole 7th seed in the AFC saga than this. Like this was kind of the big playoffs thing to watch down the stretch. And the whole time you're like, but are the Chiefs going to be trying? Because it might ruin it. And it did kind of ruin it.
Thankfully, the NFC South
we need what the
race.
Steelers to beat the Chiefs on Christmas. And
yeah, we needed the Chiefs to be trying. So they needed to lose another one.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it didn't happen. So I guess that can bring us to Vikings Lions, unless there's anything else you guys want to touch on.
I mean, there's a couple other things. Mayo got fired, and I want to talk about the Pittsburgh Cincinnati game.
Let's do it.
Let's talk about Mayo getting fired. The Patriots did end up winning today, but they took out Joe Milton. They took out May after like the first drive, and it was the Joe Milton show, and they got the win. But Mayo got fired pretty much like immediately after.
I mean, Milton said that he didn't know that he was starting this game until after kickoff. And I think that is not a great look for Mayo. And there's been a lot of stuff that just hasn't been a great look for Mayo. I mean, his public press conferences, like calling the team soft and like Milton not knowing what the plan is going into the week. I guess they won, so maybe keeping him in the dark was a good idea. But it just, I struggled to really see anything that Mayo was doing well, you know, and it didn't really seem to be much of a galvanizing force either. So I guess that I understood the firing. I mean, it just didn't seem like there was a ton of juice there.
If the plan was for Mayo to be the successor of Belichick, he didn't embody anything that Belichick did. It felt like, you know, Belichick was like one of the greatest defensive minds ever. And he has, you know, the disciple of Flores, who is out here being a great defensive mind pretty much everywhere he goes. And Mayo just doesn't feel like he's like that level. And then also he's not like the, well, like Belichick used to just be like so stoic in interview. Like you couldn't get a word out of just like cool, calm, collected. Just like we're on to Baltimore, we're on to Pittsburgh, we're on to, you know, Kansas City, like every single game. And I mean, if you're not gonna get like the true, like pass down the torch, then probably best to just find someone new.
Mayo seemed to have a lot of the stoicism and like none of the results. Like I feel like he seemed to kind of stoic all the time and just didn't seem to be exactly what the team was looking for. I don't know. All the pre-snap penalties, the gaffes, the defense falling off from where it was last year to such a significant degree.
Lack of discipline.
The like May not having designed QB runs until like week, whatever that was, 16 or 15 or something like that, when he's clearly such a gifted runner. Like it just didn't feel like people were being weaponized in the right way. It didn't feel like the team was, I mean, the product on the field was so atrocious.
Yeah. And that's something that Belichick was great at, was like getting people in good position to succeed.
Until the end, like until the end. I guess even on defense, until the end, it was good. But
yeah,
for the Belichick era to end in such a stinky way, right? Like this whole mindset and this whole do your job era just was kind of on the way out. And then they handed the keys to someone who's still very much a part of that era, like part of that team's handpicked by Belichick, right? Kind of a similar personality. And for it to just continue to be bad, I can see how the mentality is like, okay, let's actually go for something completely different. Like Belichick, we fired him and we hired someone who seems to be like kind of exactly like him. And it just went just as bad. Like I might be able to see going in a different direction. I know being one and done is harsh, but I really do see the logic.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but there is also some level of like maybe he does need more time because he's a rookie head coach, and you know there have been plenty of coaches who have had bad like first seasons that go on to be good, like very good head coaches, win Super Bowls, whatever, but maybe like quarterbacks, maybe it just won't be in New England.
Yeah.
So who do you think they'll bring in?
It's a good question. I mean, we ranked them as our number one most desirable bottom feeder. So that's another thing is like kind of strike while the iron's hot here. Like we got May, we got all this cap space. We might be able to attract someone really good.
Ben Johnson?
Yeah, Ben Johnson would be on that list. I know Vrabel's on that list. I'd be excited about him. And there's a number of guys that they could go and get. I could see maybe people looking at like the Bears, if you really like Caleb, as, you know, pretty high up on that list. But I've heard that Johnson really liked May in the draft, and May obviously I think really proved the part. It just, you know, they should have their pick. They really should. I do think Mayo got a raw deal. I mean, only getting 1 year is bogus, and the Patriots are a bad team, and he really doesn't have that much coaching experience, all things considered.
Right.
You know, not to say that he doesn't, like, you know, he's not knowledgeable or whatever, but he's, you know, 38 and played in the NFL for a while. So I think going into a situation where the team stinks and you're not only a rookie head coach, but you're a rookie head coach that maybe has a little bit less experience than usual, was a tough scenario. If he goes and proves himself in a more limited role somewhere else, I could see him bouncing back, sort of like how Morris did.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say like the book is out on him, because when you get your first opportunity, but you're still in your 30s, there's a lot of time for you to develop. But I don't blame them. You might not be, you know, in a position to go and get, you know, a serious upgrade next offseason because the candidates aren't as good, or because maybe the job is less desirable. Right now, New England both has some of the real core pieces in place that you would want, that you'd be worried about getting if they didn't have them, like mainly the quarterback, but also don't have like a bunch of restructure money that's way far into the future where they can't properly build out their team, and they, you know, don't have a bunch of like draft picks missing. They're a super moldable ball of clay outside of the fact that they have a guy like seemingly pretty set at QB if he continues to develop the way that he is. So you take that and you take what I think is an offseason where there's a lot of good candidates. I can't blame them for saying, yeah, we need to strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah, I'll be really interested to see the direction they go in. Like, Vrabel's the obvious name, and it wouldn't surprise me. But a lot of times when someone gets fired, they like to go in the total opposite direction the team does. Like, I don't know, from last year, Arthur Smith, offensive guy, gets fired. Who do they bring in? Raheem Morris, like defensive guy, because the offensive guy didn't work last time. I just think that that's kind of a common trend is you go with someone different. And Vrabel is very much just the Patriot way, like defense culture mindset, like former
That's
player
true.
of them. It wouldn't surprise me if they said, like, let's go throw a bunch of money at Liam Cohen or Ben Johnson and go bring in someone from outside this building, other side of the ball, offense, like get that figured out.
What are your thoughts on the Patriots deciding to, or at least it looks like they're deciding to keep around Elliot Wolf as their vice president of player personnel, GM, whatever you want to call it? He kind of came in and did things last year.
I mean, he drafted May, and May was a good pick. So
he drafted May, Polk, Wallace.
Well, Polk is horrific draft pick, so maybe he should be fired.
That's what I'm like. Outside of May, the rest of their draft class, I don't know if you could say was a success. But I guess if you come out of there with a franchise quarterback, you're not going to be mad.
I mean, if they switched him out, I wouldn't be like shocked. But here's the problem: like, I don't know the strength of GM candidates the way that I know the strength of head coaching candidates. Right. So. Yeah, I agree that their last draft really wasn't that crazy good outside of May. And honestly, like, May was a total layup pick. Like, you basically had no other option because you were picking third, you know? Like, what else were you going to do? Daniels and Caleb went.
They could have.
It would have been, and you could have. It would have been incredibly dumb.
No, you would have drafted.
Like, it would have been a disaster.
It was an easy decision. But at the same time, like, he drafted May, and then Mayo didn't put him in until like week 5, even though it was obvious who the better quarterback was in the preseason.
Yeah, Mayo said himself that May was the better quarterback, and he was like, yeah, he's not going to play.
Yeah, and there were rumors, and I don't know if this is fair or not, but like, I remember before the season, it seemed to like people were kind of getting cold feet about Mayo in that building, and there were kind of some rumblings of like,
interesting,
they're not being in alignment on if he was actually the guy to go with. So if there were a bunch of skeptics in that building, and then like the first year is kind of a disaster and he seems a bit out of his depth, then he may have been doomed from the start in a way that Wolf wasn't. But again, I have no idea if that's fair. I have no idea what the story is, but I do remember that being reported.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, If you want to move on to the Bengals and Steelers real quick here before we get into the Sunday night game. The Steelers have the same problem that we talked about last time we discussed them. They've got like two tricks on offense. They can run the ball and they can throw it up the sideline to Pickens. And if that's
Russell Wilson can't throw it over the middle of the field. Justin Fields is super wonky and can't do anything layered either. And it's mostly really short stuff for stuff down the sideline with him. You can't work with quarterbacks that limited and be a serious contender. You don't have to have a 1A QB to be a serious team. Like, there's plenty of teams we're talking about who I think can make the Super Bowl. And then if you're making it, you can win the Super Bowl, right? But to have somebody who basically means like, we're going to run one of the more limited offenses in the NFL because this guy is our QB. Yeah, that's how you stay. And that's how they've been, man. They've been like that for ages. I don't necessarily blame them. I think that they had no serious quarterback solution available to them outside of like trading unbelievably far up against a team that would have already wanted a franchise quarterback into like, the top three. Maybe they could have gone, if you really like one of the other three guys in that draft. And it stinks because they're entering a draft here where it's like kind of similar, where they're going to have a later pick and it's not the strongest class. So I don't know who you trade up to go get necessarily or what move you make. But I think, when you see the Steelers stuck in this rut, some people want to blame Tomlin. I understand the frustration with him. I'm not going to say people are crazy, but I really just think it's tough to figure out quarterback in the NFL. Tomlin keeps you pretty good, which makes it even more difficult. And I think you've got to change out the quarterback again and find a guy who's going to give you more than this.
I mean, we said at the beginning of the season, and once they kind of all finalized their moves, they made the commitment to be mediocre on offense when they went out and said, "Oh, we're going to have Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, and we're going to have Arthur Smith as our offensive coordinator." Like, that was an intentional commitment to being like, obviously they were thinking that it would probably work out better than this towards the end of the season. But like, from an outside perspective, it looked like this was a commitment to being mediocre on offense. And that's what it ended up being.
Yes. Here's the thing. I agree.
Yeah.
There's no way that they were going to run this scheme and have it like, okay, we're going to win the Super Bowl, or no way that it was going to end up crazy. They're in the playoffs. Who knows what can happen? Right. I don't want to be too definitive.
They're playing Baltimore next week, though, in Baltimore.
That'll be tough. That'll be tough for sure.
They can beat Baltimore. Well, that'll.
Sure, yeah.
But at any rate.
At any rate. I mean, so what would you have done looking back if you were the Steelers?
I think
it's not apparent that there even was a move to make.
Yeah.
What, sign Kirk Cousins? That would have been a disaster. Trade, you basically, like, could you have traded up for a top 3 pick? It's not even clear if that was on the table, because all of those teams up there wanted a QB. So you would have had to give up so much where they're like, okay, yeah, we'll skip out on a shot at a franchise quarterback because these guys are insane. That's probably not going to work out well either. And you also didn't know how good any of those guys were going to be. Even if you liked them, you didn't know. So that'd be tough to expect. Or they'd have to trade up multiple firsts for like quarterback 4 or 5 or 6. These are big asks. I just think year to year, this is why, when we talk about the Patriots being such a desirable job, it's because they have a guy who looks really good at quarterback. And because if you're not Mike Tomlin and you're just like a guy fresh off the street, you come in year 1 to a rebuilding team, you need to find the quarterback that offseason. And if there isn't one, you got to figure out something. You got to do something. There has to be a dude you make a move for. And it might just be that you get cornered and that keeps your team down and you get fired for it, So it's just really, really difficult. I don't disagree where it's like, they sign Arthur Smith and Justin Fields and Russell Wilson and you're like, that's not going to do it. But guess what? Wilson's on a 1-year deal. Fields is on a 1-year deal. Mm-hmm. Arthur Smith you could move off of whenever you like. They didn't dig themselves a hole. So I don't know.
Yeah, they didn't dig themselves a hole. Go ahead.
It's not the quarterback that I think they've messed up as much as it is the OC. Like going from Matt Canada to Arthur Smith is just uninspired from the jump. Canada, who ran this like zone heavy run scheme with just a small handful of plays to the point where I just could see the personnel on the field and would know what run was coming because like, oh, Gunnar Olszewski is out there. He's about to go in motion and it's going to be split zone. Like it was obvious, right? Arthur Smith is not that different. Like Arthur Smith is heavy, like zone run appreciator. And if this offense like was stinky and low ceiling with Canada, Arthur Smith is like a slightly more layered version of that. There still wasn't as much like power run scheme that I'd like to see with pulling guards. Here's a stat I love about the Steelers. Mm-hmm. They have 69 targets in the intermediate area of the field this year. The next lowest team is the Eagles with 87. So it's totally touchdown to check down.
I think that goes back to Wilson.
It does. But like Arthur Smith isn't the guy you hire if you want a more like detailed passing offense, you know? Like that hire was uninspired. Like messing around with the tackles too was kind of weird. Like the way they handled Broderick Jones at the beginning of the season and Troy Fautanu. I mean, there'd be times where I'd be watching tape earlier this season where it'd be like Broderick would be out there one snap and he would suck. And then they'd like put in Fautanu and then like Broderick Jones would be back. This is a while ago now that this was all happening. So I can't remember exactly how it all cycled through, but like they didn't have their best guys out there on the offensive line. They didn't make the most inspired hires at the offensive coordinator position. I think Tomlin could have done more to create good offense, even with their questionable quarterback options.
I think that's totally fair. Part of their issue, too, is that they don't really have like some crazy personnel to be able to go do this stuff outside of quarterback, you know? Like their offensive line they just haven't hit on like building a strong offensive line. And you look at like how the Steelers build this team out. Yes, it's true that drafting Kenny Pickett is like tough, and you know what else could they have done at quarterback this year? Like I stand by that, but at the same time, look at some of these other moves that they're making. Najee Harris in the first round. You know, they go pick up Washington, right? And it's like, all right, they're not to say that necessarily was a bad pick in the third round, but it's like it's very clear that at the same time they do lean into it. You're right. That's a good point. So. And they've like haven't done a good job building that out. I think no matter what, there is a low ceiling to that stuff, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the floor had to be as low as it was this year. So I think I would keep Tomlin. I believe that the quarterback issue ultimately is your real problem. I think Fields and Wilson, I agree they should be hitting over the middle of the field more as a team, but like, dude, you're really going to be limited with those guys. However, he needs to be more willing to get modern with the offense.
He can't be an alligator anymore.
Yeah, it's got to be a little bit fresher than this. I respect the winning. I respect the defense. I respect wanting to run the ball, but you can lean a little bit too much into it, right? I mean, the build of this team, it just doesn't work in 2024, 2025.
Yeah. You can stay in the water, but maybe be a dolphin.
That's right. You got to crawl. What happened? I guess nothing happened to alligators. They're still around. They never evolved. Yeah. So
that's the problem. They never evolved.
Yeah, that is the problem. They are. That's why I use that comp. Now I'm remembering. I do want to give a shout out to Cameron Hayward. Even though the Steelers lost, he may have ascended into like Hall of Fame consideration because I think he may have ascended into the All-Pro conversation or just not even the conversation. He may have been. He should be All-Pro after that Week 18 game. Like he he has been so dominant this season. And he's strung together so many good seasons here recently since turning like 28 too, like really kind of a rare late season breakout. But I think at this point he's stacked enough elite seasons that he's got a real chance to make it like Evans, like just crazy seasons at their ages.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it now. That would be what, his 4th AP first team All Pro if he could pull one off this year, dude. That is Hall of Fame territory. Mind you, where'd he go? But
Where did he go?
yeah, I mean, he went to Ohio State.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, but he's absolutely a beast, and I agree. His career development it's wonky. He wasn't like some elite guy. I feel like off jump, but he's certainly turned into that. So shout out to him.
Yeah, the tipped ball king. He had 3 of them, and I think he led the league going into that game with tipped passes. So JJ Watt used to be so good at this too, where he just realizes that he's not going to win on that rep and just gets his hands up. Just crafty. He's done it so many times this year in big moments. And then the other funny kind of scheme thing that I noted from this game, like they tried the classic put your best corner on the number 2 and then double the number 1 strategy. But on some of the reps, it didn't really seem like they were doubling the number 1 or doing that part of the job. It seemed like it was just Porter on Higgins and then Trice on Chase one-on-one for like a concerning amount of the reps from that night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
their cornerback group has been bad.
I've usually seen it as like less of a double, more as a bracket. But like if the bracket doesn't, work, if you're not there, like
on the first touchdown, Chase had a 2-way go. Like he released inside. Like if there's a bracket, I'd assume there's a safety there. I get on out-breaking routes or outside releases, you can't bracket that. Your sideline is the other defender. But on some of these in-breaking routes, I'm like, where is the bracket here? I get the strategy, and it's a good one. But where is the bracket on number 1? So that one made me question some things a little bit. Mm-hmm. Not the sharpest night from Burrow. A lot of quick game. Couple passes that were too far behind. One resulted in a pick. He's had a fantastic season. I guess the last thing I just want to say, I don't think he should be getting any MVP votes over Josh Allen and Lamar.
I agree.
As good as he's been, as bad as the team has been around him, I just think Lamar has had a better passing season than Burrow, despite it all. And also is just this huge presence in the run game that Burrow just is not. And I think when you add those two things up with just Lamar, I just don't see how Burrow is more valuable than that this year. And then there's Josh Allen, who's quite the same way. With kind of the stress he provides while also being crazy efficient.
To me, they're neck and neck. I mean, they are basically having as close to identical of seasons as you possibly could. Lamar's the first player ever to have 4,000 passing yards and 800 rushing yards in the same season. He's got 40 touchdowns, and he's the only player ever to have 40 touchdowns and less than 5 interceptions in a season. Like, I would vote for him for the MVP, but I can understand giving it to Allen too, because he's been playing damn good, and his team is, the higher seed. They're 14-3, 13-4. So,
and I mentioned earlier how I like per drive rates. Or did I mention that earlier? Or was I talking to a friend of mine? I can't remember.
You brought up your chart talking about like.
Yeah, per drive. Great metric. I love per drive instead of per game or per throw even. Like the Bills are second in points per drive. The Ravens are third. The Bengals are eighth in terms of yards. Like the Bills are eighth. The Ravens are first. The Bengals are 10th. So I can't really see how their offense is better than the Bills and the Ravens. And Burrow has Chase and he has T. Higgins and stuff. So it's like if their offense isn't better than Josh or Lamar's offense? Like, how is Burrow adding more value? Because it seems like he doesn't impact the running game. He has more receiving help, and the offense isn't as good as those other two. So I just, it's one of those things where he deserves a lot of respect for the season that he's having. Like, he's the best pocket passer in the league this year. Like, he's so good. But these other two are just a little bit different in terms of their skill set, in terms of the offensive engines that they are. So I think it's a bit fake woke to have Burrow as the MVP. I will say that.
I don't think that I'm quite at the point where I can hate on anybody who's like, yeah, Burrow, he had a great year. Like, I wish the Bengals were better so he could get MVP nods. I do agree it's a little bit like the team is bad, and that's why he is over the top of Lamar and Allen. I do think there's not everybody. I'm not saying that's the whole argument, but like definitely part of it where it's like, well, I agree that the team being bad shouldn't hurt him, but the way that some people are talking about it, it's like the team being bad almost helps him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's and like the defense is what's so bad. Their defense sucks. He has got to carry this he's got to carry this defense, but the offense that he has to work up with and the offense that he has to put up numbers with is quite good. All right. Like, we have seen the impact number one wide receivers have on passing statistics. It is huge. And he has two receivers that are better than the Ravens or the Bills best. So maybe Mark Andrews versus T. Higgins is maybe kind of similar.
Did Chase get the Triple Crown?
Yeah, I think he did. Nice.
Let's go.
That is sick.
Shout out to him.
Like I said on Twitter, I can see the Chase wide receiver one argument. This season, I think he was, and I love Justin Jefferson, and I think that he is an alien from outer space. But Chase like just catches it and scores so many touchdowns, just catching like a slant or something or a dig. He's got that bullet bill to him where he just catches it and just runs through everybody. Like, there's nobody else in the league right now who really has that like he does. Him and AJ Brown both are two kind of special physical talents, and everybody knows how much I love them. So I shout out to Jamar Chase too. That guy is crazy elite.
Real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how I always feel. I mean, there's just like a handful of guys where you watch them and you're like, okay, well, this guy is obviously the best. And then you watch another and you're like, well, hold on. This guy can't not be the best receiver in the NFL, because that would mean that there'd have to be somebody even better. And then you go watch. I still think it's Jefferson, but
I think it's Jefferson, but I think Chase just had the better season. He looked better this year. I don't know if he'll be better, if he was better last year, or if he'll be better next year. But I think Chase looked like the wide receiver one of the league this season, and Jefferson demands so much attention, and the way his hand-eye coordination is like so special to make all these catches that just because he doesn't like catch it and he does break a ton of, like against the Packers, he broke a bunch of tackles, but he doesn't quite have that yak juice like Chase has. And I think that's kind of the equalizer between the two of them.
I can see it.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about Sunday Night Football. Vikings, Lions for the 1 seed. And boy, did it get away from the Minnesota Vikings. We saw a little bit of prime Jared Goff, a little bit of prime Sam Darnold here tonight. I wanted to tweet out the seeing ghosts quote from Sam, because it just wasn't his night, but it wasn't either of their nights really. But the thing that really helped the Lions get this done is the fact that Jahmyr Gibbs is a freak of nature. He had 4 touchdowns, and you talk about all the great stuff that Bijan does. Dude, when Gibbs hits top speed, I mean, I don't know anyone that moves as fluidly other than maybe like Tyreek Hill at top speed. Like those are the only 2 guys that move the way they do when they're going that fast. The ability to just like get skinny, one cut at top speed and go the other direction. It's just next level stuff when they cut up field, just different. And he's also had some decent moments in pass protection.
Definitely, 100%.
Not nearly at, he's no David Montgomery. He's no Bijan in that aspect, but he's been a really, really well-rounded back in a way that, a lot of people thought he wouldn't be, because he's just like the small speedster, but he's been super valuable in pretty much every aspect, especially since Montgomery has gone down. He's done a really good job of kind of filling the void and doing both roles.
Yeah. One thing that kills the Brian Flores blitz looks is just like, what if we just run through it? Like, who cares what your blitz look is? We'll like get a hat on a hat and just run right through it. You can't screw up our protection.
Well, and it works because they've got like 7 guys that can block really well.
They're unique. The Lions are unique in that way. They chew up the blitz and they spit it out. And Ben Johnson has put up 30 plus points 4 times on Brian Flores. Because they're just outlier type good against the blitz. You can send extra guys. They have the best running back pass protectors. They have the best like sight adjust slot guy in Amon-Ra St. Brown. And Jared Goff didn't have a great night tonight, but he also like stood in there and he took some hits versus the blitz. Like there was one shallow cross that he had where he hung in there until the very last second and got it in. So they're the best against the blitz, and they have been for quite some time. And that's why the Vikings run into some problems trying to stop them.
This is a game that makes me somehow more confident in the Lions to go to and possibly win the Super Bowl. The fact that they are as banged up as they are. Jared Goff had probably one of the worst games he's played all year, and they won by 22 against a very good Minnesota Vikings team. Like, I still think the Eagles are more well-rounded at this point because they're healthier, but if the Lions are able to put up games like this, given all the adversity that they faced in this game and that they faced all year, they can still hang with anyone.
I don't know. I don't feel necessarily worse, but I don't feel better about the Lions. It's like when you go into a playoff game, there's no, they're super banged up, so it's impressive they're playing X well. Like, you just are banged up. You are worse because you are hurt. Arnold's out now. It looked like he had a pretty major injury. Yeah. And Goff putting up a stinker like this, the NFC is the NFC, but it's probably going to be a top 5 quarterback that you're seeing on the other side when you get to the Super Bowl. And while I do agree that the Lions are particularly well equipped to overcome bad games, and their running game is ridiculous and Gibbs is ridiculous, and they're probably still my pick to make it to the Super Bowl. A bad golf game could totally cost them. It could have cost them in this game if it wasn't for the Vikings being like really, really rough offensively. And Darnold.
What, dude? Aaron Glenn deciding they were just gonna man blitz the whole game. What a ballsy decision, man. I respect it, but dude, that could have gone really rough if they had converted on some of those Jefferson throws.
I feel like they're kind of putting their fate into a ref's hands with that strategy. Like, I thought tonight Jefferson was freaking out about holds, and I definitely think Anzalone would. I definitely think that Anzalone got there early several times versus Hawkinson, but it never got called, and they deserve a lot of credit for how well they played, especially on Jefferson. Like, the fact that Amik Robinson was anywhere near him playing that much man coverage is like a huge win, and they should be very happy with that. And I understand that that's the best way that they've got to generate pass rush. But I also think, like, you play with fire and you could get burned. And that's what concerns me with the Lions, is like their defensive strategy could totally fall apart versus A.J. Brown and like a ref that calls fouls in one game. And their 4th down strategy could completely sink them in some games. So they're just playing with so much risk. Now, the fact that they get the bye alleviates a lot of that risk. There's definitely still, I think it's them and the Eagles clearly as your top 2, like it's been. And but yeah, they're totally playing with fire, and it will really work tonight. But I could see it the next time with like a different crew.
Dude, there were times where they had Jefferson open and Darnold just missed him.
That's the other thing.
Darnold played a terrible game. The Darnold stock 1929, not good.
What did we say? The final is worth 25% of your grade, Darnold.
Yeah, this is the type of game that makes you completely rethink your Darnold strategy. And this next playoff game and their playoff run basically decides the whole thing. 30% of the final? Nope. Like 100%. It's like all of it. Darnold deserves to go be a starter somewhere, clearly, with the quarterback shortage that we have. But, if he does this in the playoffs next week, that you just have to look at him as a completely different quarterback, because this isn't an acceptable performance. What this was pressure still really bothers him. That's the truth.
Oh, yeah.
He's been good this year, but pressure still really bothers him. And then just straight up missing stuff that he's got to hit, in part because of that pressure. The Vikings got blown out 31-9. This game easily, if they converted, could have been, a one-score game at the bare minimum. It should have been. But they got a ton of great opportunities, and they could never make good on them because Darnold just couldn't hit anything when it came, time to, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He's fifth in negative plays this year. Like when I was on my whole Baker tirade the other week, like Darnold was right below him as someone who is in this very great situation with Kevin O'Connell and these weapons. Yet still he's taken, a very similar amount of negative plays to like CJ Stroud, who has a horrible offensive line, and like Geno Smith, who has a horrible offensive line. And like, why is that the case with Darnold? Is it because he has a horrible offensive line? Like, no. Is it because he has horrible wide receivers or something? No. It's because he's a bit late to get the ball out a lot of the times. And it's not like Geno and Stroud can't be that as well. It's just that with Darnold, it's a more glaring individual weakness. And that was that's what you're worried about with him. I mean, in both Packers games, like fumbles or interceptions or like sacks with him allowed Green Bay to kind of crawl back into the game. He almost fumbled. Remember, there was one in that Green Bay game where his hand was like just barely coming forward and he got hit and the ball almost came out and got recovered by the Packers. Like, you're just, in every game I've seen of Darnold, he's made some incredible throws downfield, like layered intermediate throws. Like, he really can hit the high end stuff. I think he's first in big time throw rate this year, and it would make sense if he was. But yeah, the negatives are a huge issue with him, and forcing him to, execute against the blitz seemed like a pretty good strategy tonight.
Yep. So it's something that you got to see him improve on. Darnold's been building for a while, so I don't want to say like he is who he is forever. And sometimes it's not about not having weaknesses. It's just how bad are your weaknesses, So we'll see how he does going forward. But a game like this, completely changes how you look at the quarterback situation. Yeah, that he just became again. I think I like Darnold, but the whole thing is dependent on this season turning into some postseason success and there being an undeniability that Darnold has something that you don't necessarily get out of a developmental rookie quarterback. That's the deciding factor. When it looks like, weeks past, when it's looked like, hey, he might have that, it's easy to say like, yeah, you might have to pay him the big bucks, keep him around. When it looks like, he's going to be too prone to stinkers and too much of a negative in games like this to go on a serious playoff run, or too easy to scheme against, you start thinking the mystery box doesn't look so bad.
Fair. But before we get out, I have to talk about Wendy's and how much I cannot get enough of this college football playoff sauce. And so I have to ask you guys, we've seen some of the early playoff games. We saw all the favorites win in round, or we saw all the top seeds win in round one. We saw all the lower seeds win in round two. Who do you guys have winning the national title, and how much sauce will they win by?
I think it's going to be Penn State, baby. Penn State, they got the best quarterback. They got the best defense. They got the best running backs. They're going to beat Notre Dame, who's kind of built similarly, but just kind of watered down. Quarterback not as good. Defense not as good. Right? Well, maybe the running back is as good. But I think they're going to beat Notre Dame, and then I think Texas is going to beat Ohio State, and then I think Drew Aller is gonna cook in the final and win.
Mind you, he's trolling. Mind you, he doesn't mean any of this. Mind you, it's late where he is, and he's not thinking straight.
Mind you, Ryan Day is still your head coach. He's got one more legendary performance.
He's demonic now. He's a demon now. It's not the same.
I think he's got a flub in him. I do. People are acting like OSU is in the clear and the title is theirs. They're getting too comfortable. I can feel it.
Or maybe they're getting too saucy.
Maybe they are.
Like,
who do you guys?
I lean towards OSU right now. They've looked like the best team over the last couple of weeks. Now, it's all dependent, I agree, on them not shooting themselves in the foot and not getting scared because now they're supposed to win the national title and like sort of clamming up in a big game and not being as aggressive as they need to be on offense, because that's a big difference maker for them. I have faith that the defense is going to do their thing. Really, since the Oregon game, the first one, the defense has been phenomenal, right? Like it's been definitely totally dominant across the board. And you've got Jack Sawyer now playing his best football. Cody Simon's been a beast. Caleb Downs is worth all the hype. The cornerback room has been great. Like, you know, the defense is the defense, but where they can get themselves in trouble is the Michigan script, where they go into a game and they're more focused on not losing and not making mistakes than they are on winning and making big plays. Now, there's reason to believe that they've overcome that to some extent, right? Against Tennessee, super aggressive, awesome. Against Oregon, super aggressive, and there was a moment in that game, even with how much they were up, where the lead had gotten down to 19, and they had gone 3 and out the possession before, and now it was 3rd and 8 again. And it's like, okay, are they gonna go 3 and out here again? And is this gonna turn into a game? Can Oregon cut this to 2 possessions? And instead, what do? They put the ball in the air and they target Jeremiah Smith. It really is that easy for him sometimes, and that's the beauty of OSU. It's like you don't even have to be that risky if you want to air the ball out and try to create a big play, because Jeremiah Smith's down there somewhere, and I'm just not sure anybody can guard him right now. That being said, if the Michigan game is how you beat OSU, Texas is a team that definitely scares me. Their defense is phenomenal. I think Ohio State's offense or defense can eat against Texas's offense for sure. Like, you know, Ewers is kind of mistake prone, and I think Ohio State could see some big plays off of that. But guess what? Michigan's offense didn't play some perfect game when they beat OSU. And I think like maybe the Buckeyes get off to a slow start and then get kind of nervous, or maybe they get a lead and then they clam up and Texas crawls their way back in because Texas can hit big plays. So it's just going to have to be like, keep your foot on the pedal. You've got the formula. You can do this. Yeah. Texas is a tough team, but you just got to trust yourself. And I think they can beat them. I think they can beat whatever team they play next.
I do think part of the Michigan loss is attributed to Ohio State trying to be a team that they're not also. Like the wanting to stay on the ground and be super physical. And I just don't think they're going to end up like playing a game where that's going to happen again. Like against Texas, I think it's going to be a game where it's like the logical thing to do is like, oh, if we want to win this game, it's like, yeah, we have to beat them in the air. And there's no like, oh, we have to prove that we can beat them on the ground. I
really think that the reason why they kept it on the ground is because they were just scared of airing the ball out and making a mistake more than it was really? Like, that's my personal take on it. I always thought that, you know, it was like a super charitable read that Day didn't just get scared. And there was one moment in the Oregon game where it was 4th and 10 and they were on like the 38 and they did not go for it. They punted. Against Indiana, same situation, they go for it.
Yeah.
What was the difference? What is the difference there? That was too passive. I really disliked that. But I think if they stay mostly aggressive, they're super talented and they can get it done. On the other side, I think it's, you look at Penn State and Notre Dame, don't they feel kind of similar? They're both really physical teams. Notre Dame has been really impressive. What they did against Georgia. Both really good on the ground, great backs for both of these teams. I'm not saying I'm necessarily totally disagreeing with your Penn State has, the best running backs left, but there's a lot of good running back duos alive in the playoffs. I think I probably lean Notre Dame, but it's close. And I think both of those teams could be a threat in the national title game. I don't think, not that, OSU obviously can't dismantle anybody. It seems like any given game, if they get really hot on offense, it could be big. But neither of those teams are okay, sigh of relief. This isn't a real national title game.
It's not like TCU versus Georgia or something.
Right. That's exactly what I'm saying. So I'll go Ohio State, Notre Dame, and I'll say OSU wins.
I'll say the same thing, Matt. The Buckeyes.
Texas, Penn State, baby.
Texas.
I could see that too. I think all 4 teams left definitely have the potential to win any given game. Largely, I just think that no team feels like they aren't mistake prone to some extent. Howard has had his games. Penn State has, Notre Dame has, Texas has, right? And all of them have great defenses that could capitalize on mistakes like that offensively. And, if I tell you any of these games are, 21 points and under for both teams, then it's really up in the air who could get it. Not saying that's necessarily how it'll go, but that script exists. So they should be good. I'm excited.
Yeah, should be a fun time. Should be filled with plenty of sauce. Make sure you're eating your Wendy's saucy nugs while you're watching these games. Shout out Wendy's for sponsoring this segment. And shout out you all for tuning in to another episode of Stay Hot, the last one of the NFL regular season. And as we get ready for the NFL playoffs, we hope you'll tune in for all of those episodes as well. So thank you all so much. And until next time, as always, from your 3 favorite fellas here at Stay Hot, we will catch you on the flippity flop.